Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the sources, turn them upside down, shake them until the most potent nuggets of knowledge fall out, and then hand them right over to you. Today, we are focused on something, well, truly revolutionary seems like the right word. It's an economic and public health model known as Kathmandu, and it's emerging from the heart of Kathmandu, Nepal.
It really is a startling premise. I mean, it explicitly tries to merge a high-volume commercial business with foundational social welfare. Basically, we're looking at a system proposing universal, lifetime-free primary health care.
Across the entire Kathmandu Valley.
Yes, the whole valley. And here's the kicker. It plans to fund 100% of that service entirely through the profits from just one domestic ride-hailing app.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this because that sounds ambitious. Our mission today, then, is to really dissect the structural and, crucially, the financial viability of this social capitalism idea.
Yeah.
Can the money made from motorbike taxis and car rides realistically sustain hundreds of free doctors' offices forever? And how does this specific funding model stack up against other global cross-subsidy systems we've seen work elsewhere?
Well, the core of the Kathmandu idea really hinges on this engineered mandatory cross-subsidization framework. The sources, they lay out two distinct legal entities, almost like Siamese twins, operating together.
Okay.
On one side, you've got the nonprofit arm,
Right.
the Kathmandu Research and Training Center, or KRTC. That's the body actually running the services, the 200-plus free clinics, the research, the training programs.
And the other side, that must be the engine, the moneymaker.
Precisely. That's the for-profit company, the Kathmandu Drive app. This is designed to be the permanent commercial funding engine. But what makes it unique is this sort of ironclad mandate sitting over it. A 100% profit lock. Every single rupee of net profit must be perpetually channeled directly into funding those nonprofit KRTC clinics. It essentially, legally, eliminates the shareholder dividend entirely. The profit motive is still there, to drive efficiency and growth, but the profit itself isn't the end goal. It's just the fuel.
So profit is structurally forced to serve a single permanent social mission. That's the high-level structure. But before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the finances, we really have to touch on the sweeping ideological claims that come with this proposal.
Yeah, the ideological backbone is laid out in an e-book, The Economic Revolution to Make Nepal a World Guru. And what's key here is that the sources present this Kathmandu model not just as a fix for Kathmandu's healthcare, but as a kind of proof of concept for a total national economic overhaul. The vision, if they actually implemented it nationally, promises these, frankly, staggering societal changes.
I mean, staggering is the word. First off, they project a dramatic strengthening of the Nepali currency. They're setting this incredibly ambitious target. 1 Nepali rupee must equal 25 Indian rupees. Now, what specific mechanism in this model, beyond just general economic activity, is supposed to achieve that kind of huge currency shift?
That's probably the most audacious claim, you're right. The authors link currency strength directly to stopping capital flight. The argument goes like this. The Kathmandu Drive app, by displacing foreign ride-hailing companies, immediately stops hundreds of millions of rupees in annual profits from leaving Nepal.
Okay, that makes sense.
And by mandating that 100% of those domestic profits are reinvested domestically into healthcare, into employment, they argue it creates this sustained internal demand loop, this repatriation and local circulation of capital that's claimed to be the main economic lever for strengthening the currency.
So the app's success becomes a kind of accidental foreign exchange policy. But the social promises are even more fundamental, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. They're aimed squarely at core societal problems. The authors claim national implementation would end 95% of corruption. Now, that speaks volumes about the lack of trust in traditional state services, right? The sources argue that the transparent nature of citizen-funded, privately operated social services, potentially tracked by a public ledger, which we'll get into, will just eliminate the opportunities for graft and leakage that often plague government budgets.
So it sort of bypasses traditional bureaucratic channels, making the funding stream visible and hopefully clean.
Exactly. And then there's this. They assert it would permanently abolish the dowry practice.
How? How does a ride-hailing app abolish dowry?
Well, that's tied less directly to the app itself and more to the promise of massive job creation. They talk about 5 to 6 million new jobs nationally. The idea is by empowering women with financial independence and economic opportunity, you remove the economic pressure and dependence that kind of fuels the dowry system. It's an economic solution proposed for a deeply embedded social issue.
Interesting. And the scale just keeps expanding. It's not just primary care. If scaled nationally, the model suggests providing free education from nursery right up to PhD and free medical training, MBBS to MD, across all private schools and hospitals in Nepal.
Yes. This isn't just basic stuff. It's the complete dismantling of private tuition and healthcare fees, all funded by this commercial revenue engine.
So private schools and hospitals become, what, highly efficient government contractors, basically.
Pretty much. They'd essentially become highly efficient, publicly funded contractors, keeping their operational autonomy, but operating under the financial mandate of this Kalkiwad model. That's the big picture ideology.
Okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. Back to the immediate, tangible offer for people living in the Kathmandu Valley right now. That's the promise of lifetime free treatment at over 200 Kalki Sena clinics. But crucially, while lifetime is the goal, they guarantee this service for at least 2 years. That guarantee suggests they're confident about raising the initial money.
And that confidence, yeah, it's rooted in the community fundraising plan, which is phase one. But structurally, it also aims to tackle another critical national issue: brain drain.
The sources actually make an explicit political comparison here. Right, they contrast it with the mayor's initiatives. The proponent, Jay Saw, apparently views his clinics as a strategic way to keep doctors in Nepal. We're talking 400 to 500 highly trained doctors who might otherwise leave each year.
Exactly. He wants to provide meaningful, well-paid, mission-driven work, specifically focused on these advanced public health goals like AMR.
And the comparison.
Well, they make a direct comparison to Mayor Balin Shah's existing free clinics in Kathmandu. Now, the claim made in the source material, and we're just reporting this, is that the mayor's efforts are structured in a way that actually pushes doctors abroad. The implication seems to be that the Kalkawad model offers better pay, maybe better resources, and critically, a more compelling professional purpose, tackling that doctor retention crisis head on.
So it's healthcare access, yes, but it's also about building national capacity, national prestige even. But, okay, before that permanent engine, the ride-hailing app, gets going, they need cash, they need runway. And this is where phase one clicks in. Securing the first 2 years of operating funds entirely through citizen participation, bypassing foreign investment, bypassing traditional bank loans. This is the community-funded seed capital part.
Yeah, and the mechanism is pretty unique because it actually requires residents to make a specific contribution to even become eligible for the free service. It's an explicit barrier to entry, totaling Rs 251. It seems designed to build a sense of collective ownership from the get-go.
Okay, walk us through the steps. Step one.
Step one for eligibility. Residents have to download the Kalki Sena Drive app after the Chatha Festival. Then they need to contribute Rs 251 as a donation.
And timing it after Chath. For our listeners, Chath is a really significant Hindu festival, especially in Nepal and parts of India. Using that timing, it carries a lot of cultural weight, right? Suggesting purity, collective effort.
It definitely signals that. And that Rs 251 donation goes straight, irrevocably, to the nonprofit KRTC, the clinic operator. Step two requires buying the ideology, essentially the ebook we mentioned for Rs 1000.
So 251 plus 1,000 equals Rs 1,251 total.
Correct. And the sources are crystal clear on this. Only those who make that full Rs 1,251 contribution get access to the free clinic services. It basically turns healthcare access into a kind of membership benefit, earned through putting in that initial seed funding together.
And the scale here is key. They're targeting a massive base. 2 million people, that's 20 lakh just in the Kathmandu Valley. That's a huge chunk of the city's population.
It is. And the sequencing is clever. It's the financial de-risking element. The Rs 1000 book sale only actually starts once those 2 million people have joined via the initial Rs 251 membership phase.
Ah, okay. So they ensure they have a verified, committed user base before they try to raise the bulk of the capital.
Exactly. If they hit that 2 million threshold, it results in an initial capital pool of Rs 2.5 billion.
2.5 billion rupees. That's what? Roughly $19 million USD, that's serious money. And the sources really emphasize this is community-funded seed capital, zero foreign investment, zero institutional loans, reinforces that whole self-reliance narrative.
It does. Now, the big question, the viability check, can Rs 2.5 billion actually guarantee 2 years of service across 200 clinics? We need to look at the projected annual running costs, the OPEX.
And the sources break that down.
They do for a standard polyclinic under the KRTC network. They budget salaries for, let's see, 2 doctors, 2 nurses, 1 pharmacist, and 1 admin staff member. Plus, you've got rent, utilities, and a stock of essential medicines, including, importantly, the specialized stuff needed for those culture tests we'll talk about later.
And attracting those 400, 500 doctors isn't cheap, right? They need competitive salaries to stop the brain drain.
Absolutely key. So when you factor in competitive salaries and scale it up across all 200 clinics, the total estimated annual OpEx comes out at around Rs 1.34 billion per year. Now that assumes they hit the ground running with really high volume efficiency.
Okay, so Rs 2.5 billion in the pot and an annual burn rate of Rs 1.34 billion.
Mathematically, yeah, the Rs 2.5 billion fund can finance the full 200 clinic network for about 18, maybe 19 months at full steam. So the conclusion drawn is that the claim 2 years of free treatment guaranteed is actually financially plausible.
Plausible, especially if they don't launch all 200 clinics on day one.
Exactly, especially if the clinic rollout is strategically phased, maybe over the first year, starting smaller. The crowdfunding essentially buys the organization 2 critical years to get the real engine, the long-term revenue source, successfully launched and established.
So the community buys the runway. But what happens when that runway runs out after 18 months or so? We need the perpetual engine. That's phase 2, right? Phase 2. This is the shift from the one-off community contributions to recurring commercial revenue. The Kathmandu Drive app itself. It's set to launch, they say, within 3 to 4 months, and it's designed as a direct local competitor to the big foreign players already there. Pathio, InDrive, Yango.
And the viability of the entire Kalkawad model, frankly, hinges on whether this app can actually grab significant market share. So we have to look at the Kathmandu Valley market dynamics.
What do the sources say about that?
They estimate the valley population is around 3 million, and there's already an established active ride-hailing user base of about 800,000 people.
Wow, 800,000. So nearly 1 in 3 residents regularly uses these apps already.
It's a highly engaged market. And the total value, the sources project the annual total ride volume potential. All the money spent on rides in the valley could be roughly Rs 100 billion.
100 billion rupees. It's about $750 million USD. Okay, so this is definitely a mature, high-value digital market. It's ripe for disruption, especially by a local player with a social mission.
That's the idea. Now, if the Kathmandu Drive app takes a competitive commission, say around 10%, maybe 15%, which is common, you're looking at an annual gross commission potential of maybe Rs 10 billion. But remember, the only number that matters for the mission is the net profit that gets locked into funding the clinics.
Right. Gross is vanity, profit is sanity.
Yeah.
Or in this case, sustainability.
Exactly. And this is where the analysis gets a bit conservative, which is good. If we assume, realistically, that maybe 10% of that gross revenue converts to actual net profit after all the running costs, the marketing, driver payouts, everything we land, at the crucial figure, Rs 1 billion in net profit per year.
Okay, Rs 1 billion. That's the target for the perpetual subsidy stream. And based on our earlier OpEx calculation of Rs 1.34 billion for all 200 clinics, well, Rs 1 billion a year is enough to sustainably fund somewhere between 75 and 100 clinics forever.
The implication is pretty clear. The model proves itself financially self-sufficient, permanently sustainable if, and it's a big if, the Kathmandu Drive app captures just 15 to 20% of the existing ride-hailing market share in Kathmandu.
So the math checks out, provided they can execute effectively in a competitive market.
Execution is everything. But succeeding here also ties directly back into those nationalist goals we talked about, specifically stopping capital flight.
How much are they saying leaves the country now?
The sources estimate the current foreign competitors are sending somewhere between Rs 400 and 500 million in annual profits out of Nepal. So, by capturing this market, Kathmandu Drive aims to immediately stop that outflow, keep that wealth circulating inside Nepal. They reckon this could inject an extra Rs 5 to 10 billion annually into the valley economy, supporting that currency stability goal too.
And there's also a very specific social employment angle layered on top, isn't there?
Yes, and this really speaks to the political context. The plan explicitly states they intend to provide stable employment within the company for 500 to 600 family members of those injured or killed during the recent Gen Z revolution.
That's very targeted. It directly connects the commercial business to a national legacy, a recognition of sacrifice.
It does. It's a politically sensitive but potentially powerful employment promise.
Okay, so we have the profit target, the 1 billion. But again, how do we guarantee that money actually goes to the clinics forever? What stops future managers or owners from just taking dividends?
Governance. It's absolutely key. The sources outline a few guarantees, or proposed guarantees. First is the legal mandate, that zero dividend policy we mentioned, 100% reinvestment into the KRTC. This has to be baked into the company's legal structure, its articles of association, maybe something like the legal trust structure Patagonia uses.
It needs to be legally bomb-proof. And second, transparency.
Radical transparency is the promise. The sources propose using a blockchain ledger. The idea is to publicly track not just the initial Rs 251 donations, but the flow of every rupee from ride commissions into the profit pool and then out to the clinic operating expenses, salaries, medicine purchases, everything.
Down to the individual clinic level.
That seems to be the goal. That level of granular, immutable transparency is intended to build, unshakable community trust and accountability.
Okay. And finally, what about profit volatility? Markets go up and down, competition heats up. What if the app has a bad year?
Diversification is the plan there. They don't intend to stay just a ride-hailing app. To make the funding engine more robust and stable, the plan is to integrate other revenue streams, food delivery, parcel services, maybe telemedicine consultations linked to the clinics.
Turning it into a kind of super app.
Exactly. That significantly increases the potential size of the mission-locked profit pool and makes it less dependent on just one service line.
All right, we've covered the money side, the engine. Now let's really drill down into what the clinics will actually do, because it's not just about handing out basic primary care. The unique angle here, the real public health mission, seems to be tackling antibiotic resistance, AMR.
Yes, and this is what potentially elevates the whole project. It moves it from being just a local charitable thing to being part of tackling a critical global health crisis. The sources explicitly frame this Calcawad network as a strategic decentralized weapon in the fight against AMR.
Which the WHO calls one of the top 10 global health threats, right?
Exactly. So it's a massive issue. And the specific intervention Calcawad promises is what sets it apart from your typical free clinic. They commit to conducting free culture tests wherever possible.
Okay, explain why that's so important. What does a culture test do, and how does it fight AMR?
It's absolutely critical because a culture test identifies the exact bacteria causing an infection and, crucially, tells you which specific antibiotics will actually work against it and which ones won't. It's the gold standard for responsible antibiotic prescribing.
Whereas often doctors just prescribe broad-spectrum antibiotics, hoping they'll work.
Precisely. Especially in low-resource settings, culture tests can be seen as expensive or time-consuming. So doctors often rely on guessing or using powerful broad-spectrum drugs that kill lots of different bacteria, including the good ones. This massive overuse and misuse of antibiotics is the single biggest driver of resistance developing. Bacteria evolve to survive.
So by doing the culture test first, you can prescribe a targeted, narrow-spectrum antibiotic that you know will work, reducing the overall use of antibiotics and slowing down resistance.
Exactly. But offering these tests for free across 200 separate clinics, that's a huge operational challenge and a potential financial black hole in that Rs 1.34 billion annual budget we talked about.
Yeah, these tests aren't cheap typically. How do they propose to manage that cost?
That's a really good question, and it's probably why the sources rate the operational cost management aspect as only moderate in feasibility. It likely requires either getting heavily subsidized testing materials, maybe negotiating massive bulk purchase discounts for lab consumables, or perhaps partnering with existing labs rather than setting up 200 mini labs. But the potential impact on AMR is arguably worth the risk and complexity.
It forces a change in clinical practice.
And it directly links to changing behavior in the wider community, too.
How so?
Well, the source material explicitly calls out the common practice of people self-medicating with antibiotics, maybe buying them over the counter from a pharmacy without a prescription. It likens this practice to consuming slow poison.
Strong words.
Very. The network aims to use its clinics not just for treatment, but as hubs for public education. They want to hammer home the message. Don't take antibiotics unless a doctor, guided by a test, prescribes them. They aim to eradicate that dangerous habit through both clinical rigor and constant community education.
So it's a proactive defense, connecting that individual prescription based on a test in a local clinic to the huge existential threat of the post-antibiotic era, where common infections could become deadly again.
That's precisely the connection they're making. The stated dual public health goals really underline this. First, protect Nepal from potentially catastrophic health outcomes after 2050 if AMR isn't controlled, saving potentially millions of lives globally in the long run. And second, by giving doctors these state-of-the-art tools and this critical, compelling mission fighting AMR, they solve the brain drain problem we discussed earlier.
Right, keeping those 400, 500 doctors a year in Nepal.
Exactly. The AMR focus makes the job professionally meaningful and strategically important for the whole country, not just another clinical post.
Okay, Let's zoom out again and place Calquad in the bigger picture, the global context of social enterprise and healthcare funding. When we talk about using cross-subsidies to fund healthcare, certain famous examples usually come up.
Oh, yeah. The gold standard, especially for high volume, super efficient, low cost cross subsidy, is definitely found in India. You immediately think of organizations like Aravind Eye Care and maybe Narayana Health. They are absolute masters of the standardized high throughput delivery model.
Explain how those models work, though, because their financial mechanism is a bit different from Calquad's, isn't it?
It is slightly different, yes. In models like Aravind Eye Care, they basically operate different tiers of service within the same system. Wealthier patients choose to pay full price, maybe for more amenities or quicker appointments, and the profits generated from those paying patients are then used directly to subsidize the huge volume of free or heavily subsidized surgeries and treatments offered to low-income patients.
So rich patients pay for poor patients, essentially, within the same clinical service.
That's the core idea. The absolute key to making it work is ruthless efficiency and standardization performing procedures at massive scale to dramatically lower the cost per procedure.
But Calquad, as the sources point out, introduces a really crucial distinction here.
A fundamental one. The payer shifts entirely. In Aravind, the payer subsidizing the free care is the high-income patient receiving care in the same system. In Calquad, the payer is completely external. It's the for-profit ride-hailing app. The clinics themselves aim to be 100% free at the point of service for everyone who's made that initial Rs. 251 contribution.
So it completely decouples the quality or availability of care from the patient's ability to pay at that moment.
Exactly. It allows the clinic network, in theory, to focus purely on high-volume efficiency, quality control, and the AMR mission, while the separate commercial app focuses purely on winning market share and generating profit. The execution risk shifts from managing complex patient pricing tiers to succeeding in the cutthroat digital economy.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings us neatly to the second global analog, the whole mission lock profit structure.
Right. The idea that you can legally bind the profits of a commercial company to perpetually fund a social or environmental mission. That structure itself isn't entirely new. Newman's Own is the classic example, right? They've donated 100% of their profits from food products to charity for decades.
Billions of dollars, I think.
Huge amounts. And more recently, you have the outdoor gear company Patagonia. They did something structurally quite radical by transferring the non-voting ownership of the company into a specially designed legal trust and a nonprofit. The explicit purpose was to ensure that the company's substantial profits are perpetually locked into funding environmental protection and climate action.
So Newman's Own and Patagonia proved that the governance commitment, the mission lock, can be made durable. It can withstand leadership changes, market pressures over the long term.
Exactly. They prove the structural concept is sound. Calquad essentially takes that proven governance discipline and applies it to a very 21st century digital platform business. And this is where the synthesis, the combination, creates something genuinely novel.
The specific stack is the innovation.
That's what the analysts reviewing it seem to conclude, yes. The core innovation is the unique combination of these different, already proven elements. We haven't really seen this specific configuration deployed globally before. Dedicating 100% of the operating profits from a digital mobility platform, which is high volume, potentially high margin, to finance a citywide network of free primary care clinics, which are themselves focused on a very specific, measurable scientific goal like AMR reduction, and the whole thing kickstarted by a mass-scale citizen crowdfunding campaign.
It's taking the operational efficiency lessons from Aravind, marrying them with the ironclad mission lock governance of Patagonia, and applying that whole package to the scalable, profitable engine of a modern digital app.
Well put. And that comparison immediately throws up some key lessons, some best practices that Calquad really needs to borrow if it's going to succeed. The sources highlight 4 main recommendations.
Okay, what are they?
First, governance. It must be legally watertight. That mission lock needs to be absolutely ironclad, perhaps mirroring those legal trust structures Patagonia used. This protects the perpetual funding stream from any future political interference or leadership drift.
Makes sense. Second.
Operations. Ruthless efficiency is non-negotiable. They have to achieve Aravind-style efficiency. Standardized protocols, high patient throughput, laser focus on keeping the per-patient cost low. If they don't, that Rs. 1.34 billion annual OPEX could easily balloon to 2 billion or more, and the whole funding model collapses.
Especially with those free culture texts. Third recommendation.
Scale. Launching 200 clinics right out of the gate is incredibly ambitious, maybe too ambitious. The strong recommendation is to start smaller. Run a measured pilot project first, maybe 20 clinics, target 50,000 initial users, thoroughly stress test the operational model, the finances, the app integration before attempting the massive citywide expansion. Learn and iterate.
Pilot, prove, then scale. Logical. And the fourth.
Transparency and accountability, especially given the citizen funding. Drawing inspiration from models like the Kenyan mobile health wallet MTBA, Calcawad should build a health wallet feature right into the Kalki Drive app from day one.
What would that do?
It would allow every single person who contributed that Rs led 30,951 to see in near real time how their seed capital is being used and the impact it's having, number of consultations, tests conducted, maybe even anonymized health outcome improvements over time. It makes the connection tangible and reinforces trust.
That connection. Seeing how your ride yesterday might have paid for someone's crucial culture test today. That could be incredibly powerful for maintaining the mission's momentum. Okay, we've established the model's uniqueness, its potential, and the global parallels. Now, let's get to the bottom line. What's the source's overall verdict on financial feasibility? How does it rate the different parts of this complex two-phase structure?
Right. The feasibility analysis gives a kind of mixed but generally positive, or at least plausible, rating. The model gets a strong rating in two absolutely critical areas. First, the initial capital model that our feed 2.5 billion crowdfunding plan. While it's a huge target, the way it's structured with the phase contribution is seen as efficiently de-risking those crucial first 2 years.
Okay, so the Kickstart mechanism looks solid on paper. What's the second strong?
The recurring revenue engine, the Kalki Drive app itself. The fundamental business model of ride-hailing is proven globally to be capable of generating large, scalable profits. So the potential for it to sustainably generate that $1 billion annual target is considered strong.
So the foundation that the initial funding and the long-term engine's potential are seen as conceptually sound. Where do the concerns lie? Where does it get a weaker rating?
It gets rated as moderate in two key areas. First is operational cost management. Running 200 decentralized clinics efficiently requires extraordinary logistical discipline. That commitment to free culture tests for AMR prevention, as we discussed, is a major cost driver. Without achieving that Erevan-level standardization and efficiency, the Rs 1.34 billion OPEX could easily spiral out of control.
So moderate feasibility on controlling the day-to-day running costs. What's the other moderate?
Long-term scalability. Expanding this model, both the ride-hailing app and the clinic network successfully outside the relatively dense, contained ecosystem of the Kathmandu Valley presents significant new challenges. You've got different infrastructure, maybe harder doctor recruitment in rural areas, potentially different competitive dynamics for the app. Scaling nationally is a whole different ballgame.
Okay. Strong on concept, moderate on execution and scaling. Where is it rated weakest? What needs the most immediate work?
It gets a weak needs design rating specifically on transparency and governance. While the intention for the zero dividend policy in the blockchain ledger is clearly stated and is positive, the sources emphasize that the actual legal and operational separation between the for-profit Kalki Drive and the nonprofit KRTC isn't yet fully designed or articulated.
The structures aren't defined yet.
Not clearly enough. It absolutely requires the immediate design of, say, an independent governing board with real teeth, clear firewalls between the two entities, and a mandatory independent public audit system to make that transparency promise real and verifiable. The how needs to be built.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's pivot to the key risks identified in the source material and the strategy suggested to mitigate them. The biggest immediate hurdle has got to be winning market share from Paytho, InDrive, Youngo, right?
Absolutely. That's listed as a primary risk. Fierce market competition and the existing brand loyalty drivers and users might have to the incumbents. The mitigation strategy has to focus on offering a clearly superior value proposition to both sides of the market. For drivers, the source suggests maybe offering a better, more transparent revenue share structure, perhaps a fixed low commission rate instead of variable percentages to attract and retain the best, most reliable drivers.
Yep.
For users, they need more than just potentially cheap rides. They need integrated benefits. Seamless, prioritized access to the free clinics linked to their app usage, maybe even integrated health insurance benefits subsidized by the app's surplus profits, creating a holistic ecosystem incentive that the foreign competitors can't easily match.
Right, wrap the healthcare benefits around the transport service.
Right.
Okay, second major risk. What if not enough people sign up initially? What if they miss that 2 million target for the Rs? 1,251 contributions. Say they only get 500,000.
Low uptake is a huge financial risk, yeah. It means that initial R's 2.5 billion capital pool shrinks dramatically. Your operational runway might shorten from 18 plus months down to maybe only 6 or 9 months. The mitigation strategy there has to be flexibility and adaptability. They must be prepared to immediately stagger the clinic rollout. Instead of trying to launch all 200 clinics quickly, they'd have to start much smaller, maybe with a core cluster of 20 or 50 clinics. Preserve the capital they do have, demonstrate success and value on a smaller scale, and then scale up incrementally only as membership numbers rise and the app starts generating revenue. It buys them more time to prove the concept and market the benefits.
Start small, prove it works, then grow. And the final key risk, profit volatility. What if the Drive app just doesn't make as much profit as hoped?
Yeah.
Or there's an economic downturn affecting ride volume?
Financial resilience is crucial. The mitigation here is twofold. First, proactively build a substantial financial reserve fund from any early surpluses, enough to cover, say, 6 to 12 months of clinic operating expenses, acting as a buffer against lean periods. Second, aggressively diversify those revenue streams from day one.
Don't just rely on rides.
Exactly. Push hard on integrating food delivery, parcels, telemedicine, as we mentioned, but also potentially look at other commercial activities like ethical in-app advertising, or perhaps even selling anonymized aggregated mobility and potentially health data analytics to urban planners or public health researchers, provided, of course, it adheres to the absolute strictest privacy standards and ethical guidelines.
Okay, so pulling all this analysis together, the potential, the risks, the global context, what are the top 3 most critical strategic recommendations that CalcuWad absolutely must implement now to maximize its chances of success, credibility, and long-term sustainability?
Based on the source analysis, 3 things stand out. First, institute public audit dashboards immediately. Don't just promise blockchain transparency later. Build visible, verifiable tracking of how that initial Rs 1,251 community funding is being spent right now. That's paramount for converting initial enthusiasm into lasting trust.
Show, don't just tell. Makes sense. Second,
Tackle that operational cost risk head on, especially for the expensive AMR intervention. The recommendation is to actively partner with established government hospitals or central diagnostic labs. Leverage their existing infrastructure and scale to significantly reduce the per unit cost of those crucial diagnostic procedures, especially the culture tests. Don't try to build everything from scratch if you don't have to. That helps stabilize the OpEx dramatically.
Smart. Use existing capacity.
Yeah.
And the third recommendation, it leverages the unique mission focus.
Precisely. Given the explicit, scientifically vital commitment to tackling global antibiotic resistance, CalcuWad should actively apply for development grants from major international health bodies, the WHO, the UNDP, maybe foundations like the Gates Foundation or the Wellcome Trust. Because the AMR prevention program makes CalcuWad a strong candidate for targeted international funding specifically for that public health component. If they can secure grants to subsidize the AMR testing program, it frees up more of the ride-hailing profits to cover general primary care and potentially expand the service faster. It aligns their local mission with global health priorities. #, outro.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into the CalcuWad model has certainly revealed something, well, genuinely unique. It really does feel like a radical prototype of what the sources are calling CalcuWad economics, a system where capitalism is deliberately harnessed, maybe contained, definitely constrained to fund socialism, all through mass-scale digital entrepreneurship and direct community buy-in.
Yeah, it's attempting to prove that a for-profit company, if rigidly governed by a permanent, legally enforced mission lock, can actually serve as the ultimate self-sustaining endowment for essential public goods like universal health care. The novelty, as we've discussed, is really in that specific stack, using the cash flow from digital mobility to finance an AMR-focused, decentralized clinic network, all kickstarted by the citizens themselves.
And if it's still an if, but if they can successfully establish that financial flywheel, if they can combine that Erevan-style operational discipline with the kind of ironclad governance commitment we saw with Patagonia, it really does offer a potentially distinctive blueprint, especially for resource-constrained nations looking for pathways to self-sufficiency in providing social services.
And that, I think, leads us to the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to really chew on. The entire model rests on that initial Rs 1,251 social subscription from millions of citizens, and then the perpetual reinvestment of business profits earned within the community. So the question becomes, could this model, funded entirely by citizens and the profits of a dedicated local enterprise, be the ultimate blueprint for achieving other universal social services? Think free education, maybe free basic legal aid. Could it offer a way to permanently bypass reliance on potentially unstable government tax revenues or volatile foreign aid, or the systemic bureaucratic corruption that plagues so many systems?
A powerful challenge indeed to the traditional ways we think about funding social welfare. An immense vision, a unique financial proposal unfolding in Kathmandu. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.